Right. Thank you, everyone, for attending this evening's Coaches Corner. This is the first one of 2026. The Foundations Framework for Wales is our topic for the evening. We've got a special guest, Clare Roberts from Sport Wales. She is going to be going through a short presentation, and then we can kind of open up for a Q&A afterwards. And so I'm going to literally pass off to you, Claire, if you wanted to share your presentation and maybe just introduce what you do at Sport Wales?
Yeah, I'm going to just check that this is sharing first.
Yeah,
Let me just get this to the right slide.
yeah, that's great. I can see that.
Put that in there. My laptop's on a real go slow today. So Mark has said that if my laptop crashes, he will sing to you until I get back into the call. That's the agreement, okay?
Yeah, I'll give it a go. I will take requests as well. There we go. There
Yeah,
we go. We're on the first page. So I'm going to pass over to you, Claire, if you just want to just let the guys know who you are, and then
yeah, no
um,
worries at
got
all.
straight down to it.
Okay, so evening all. My name is Clare Roberts, and I am the Foundation and Participation Lead for Sport Wales. So I've been working closely with all of the sports sector in my role. I've been in my role for 5 years, but especially for the last 3 years on the Foundations Framework Wales. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly go through some of the kind of key elements of the Foundations Framework Wales. And then what we'll do at the end is we'll build in some time for Q&A and some really rich discussion and kind of get to know each other a little bit more on the call as well. But I think I'll do the presentation before my laptop crashes again, because that's the second time we've done it tonight. It doesn't like Zoom for some reason, but we're going to go for it and hopefully it'll all work out okay. So just to double check, Mark, you can definitely see the PowerPoint. Yeah, and that's moving
Yeah, I
along
can
with it.
see the slides. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
Brilliant, awesome. Okay, so just going to start off just by going through the Foundations Framework Wales and a few kind of key stats. And one thing that I found out this year, which kind of blew my mind a little bit as a former teacher, is that the sport and physical activity sector is the second largest sector to engage with children and young people outside of education. So it's quite a big responsibility on us as role models, as coaches, as volunteers, clubs, committees, etc., to kind of provide for children. And if you think about it, we are the largest unpaid sector as well, because obviously education, a lot of people get paid. So just to say thank you to everybody on the call for coming along tonight, because I know a lot of you will be doing this and not getting paid for it. And you do it because you want to better the experiences for children and young people in Wales. So just to say, first of all, thank you for joining, and hopefully you find some of this information useful as well. So when I talk about foundations this evening, we're not talking about the foundation of a house. We are talking about giving every young children the skills, confidence and motivation to lead active, healthy and enriched lives. So when I'm talking about foundations, just kind of think of like the building blocks of a child's kind of sporting experience. And we're starting at the beginning when we're talking about foundations. And if any of you got a really keen eye, you might see somebody you know on this slide in the picture. I don't think she knew I was going to pop it in the presentation this evening, but it is Fionn in action. And I thought I'd try and get some cycling images in.
It's in the cyclocross pits there, Fiona. You for I assume your Abergavenny Road Club.
Yeah, I mean the first and only time I've ever been on like in the pits rather than the other side of the pits, and I find that more stressful, so I won't be doing that.
Oh yeah,
Fabulous.
great.
Okay, so what we're currently seeing at the moment, and some of you might have actually joined the little workshop just before Christmas, I think, Fionn, wasn't it, in the Sport Wales building on a Saturday morning. And I did go through a kind of a bit of this. So some of this you might already have heard, and for many of you it might be quite new as well. So the kind of issues that we're seeing in Wales at the moment is we are seeing that children as young as 7 are switching off from being active and engaging in any physical activity, let alone sport. And generally, that is because the experiences that they're being provided with in school, if you think about kind of like your PE lessons and your extracurricular clubs, and outside of school in terms of clubs, just don't meet their needs. And it's just not for them. And they're kind of being demotivated, and they're kind of going, actually, I don't want to be in that environment anymore. And physical activity and sport is not for me. And what we're seeing as a result of children decline in engaging in physical activity at such a young age is we have actually got the highest obesity levels across any of the 4 home nations. So 1 in 4 children in Wales actually enter school overweight or obese, and that stat sticks all the way through into adulthood. We've actually got 1 in 3 children in certain parts of Wales, so the statistic is slightly higher in certain parts of Wales. And unfortunately, we're trying lots of different things to reverse that trend. But at the moment, it feels that other kind of activities are having a greater pull on children than kind of physical activity and sport. But we know when they're there and they have a great experience, they stick with us. But it's just making sure that we get them into our clubs and have a great experience to kind of start with. So only 22% of 8 to 11-year-olds actually meet physical activity guidelines in Wales. So that's less than a quarter of children aged 8 to 11. So as you can see, the kind of statistics is they're switching off before the age of 7. And then if they do continue, only 22% are meeting the physical activity guidelines, which is 60 minutes or more a day. And that includes your break times, your kind of PE lessons, your extracurricular and your club as well. And then we also know that 1 in 3 children feel confident in trying new sports. And if you think of a sport such as cycling, which is quite technical, if the children don't have those fundamental cycling skills at a young age, they're probably not even going to access a club because they don't feel confident. So there's a call across all of the sectors in Wales, all sports, but even areas like education, play, early years, where we're kind of saying we've really got to move the dial on this because we do need to have more children feeling confident to take part in physical activity and sport. Otherwise, our stats are going to continue to get worse. So what we've been doing for the last kind of 36 months is working with many, many different governing bodies, local authorities and national partners in Wales to kind of figure out what needs to change. And we've come up with 3 pillars. We've tested these pillars with children. So we've spoken to children and actually said, like, what is it that you want from your sporting experience? What is it that makes physical activity enjoyable for you? And these are the areas that they've come up with as well. So the first one is obviously ensuring that the session or the environment that you create in your club makes them feel safe and creates a sense of belonging. It prioritises enjoyment and involvement and nurtures their physical development and their confidence as well. And that came through quite a lot actually around the confidence in particular. So what is the Foundations Framework Wales? So it is a good practice guide. So technically it's a document at the moment, and what we're looking to do is bring that document to life. And I'm going to go through some of the resources that we've been creating to bring the framework to life. And it's aimed at anyone delivering, organising and promoting physical activity and sport for children aged 3 to 11 years. Now, initially we started off and we kind of went, let's look at like 0 to 12. But actually we realised within the physical activity and sports sector, we don't really do much for kind of children aged kind of 3 and under. So we've worked with Early Years Wales and Play Wales, and they're going to look after that 0 to 3 space because babies and toddlers are quite kind of specific in terms of what they need in regards to movement. So within the physical activity and sports sector, we're going to focus on 3 to 11. Now, generally children at age 11 don't change what they want overnight. The same things will kind of continue through until they're probably around 14, 15, or maybe even later. But we've kind of stopped at 11 because that's the end of primary school. And then we're going to potentially create something for secondary school pupils in the future years. Even though my colleague Simon, who might be on the call very shortly, keeps nagging me for one now, it will be coming in the future. So as I said, it's come about over the last 6 months, working with a range of different partners and extracurricular partners. And as you can see here, there was a whole host of partners that have been involved. Everyone from swimming, athletics, cycling, netball, rugby, local authorities have all been involved, which has been fantastic. We've had some new ones come on board recently, including boxing and a couple of others as well, which is fantastic. So who is the framework aimed at? So anyone and everyone can use this framework. It's not, for one particular stakeholder group. Eventually, everyone can use it. But at the moment, we are focusing in on making sure that the clubs and coaches in clubs are aware that this framework exists, so that you can highlight the amazing work that you do in your club against the principles in the framework, but also use the framework to kind of reflect on where you are on your journey. And I'll go through a couple of little tools in a minute that you could use to kind of highlight some of those positive areas, but also look at some areas that you might be like, oh, we could maybe do a little bit more in that space. We're also going to be working with young ambassadors, and I travelled around with my colleague Simon just before Christmas to every part of Wales to work with young people to make sure that, number one, they were aware of the framework, but number two, to test the language of the framework and test the principles of the framework with them as well. And this is where I'm going to take a breather a second, and we're going to do a little bit of an interactive task, just so I'm not completely talking at you for the whole time. I might need to ask Mark and Fionn to kind of help me in a minute, look at the chat. So what I would like you to do is have a little look at these 9 principles that I've put into the 3 kind of principal areas. And in the chat, I would like you to write down, or not write the whole sentence, but write down the letters. So, for example, you might put A, D, and F, just making that up. But which 3 statements do you think children and young people put as the most important things that they want to get from this sport and physical activity experience? So out of those 9, which 3 letters represent the 3 statements that you think come top when we ask the children to rank them in terms of most important? So if you could pop those 3 letters into the chat for me, and I'm going to ask Mark and Fionn then to call them out as they come in.
I'm happy to call them out. If people want to put that in, I'm going to do it myself, actually.
So I'll give you all 30 seconds just to pop them in to the chat. I'm trying to see. Oh, I can't see the chat. Hang on. Dun, dun, dun. Thank you, Tanya. Tanya's off. And Gareth.
Yeah, so there's a big mix, to be fair. So BDH, ADH, BGI, ADH. So that's a repetitive. Is A's, yeah, DEG, AEH, BDG. So yeah, it's probably quite mixed, if I'm honest.
It is.
Yeah, so BDH, BEF.
Fabulous.
Yeah,
okay.
A big spread of answers, to be fair.
There.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do now is I would like you, so I can see Matthew's the last one to write here. So can you underneath, in the chat now, can you pick one statement from that list of 9? So just pick one letter that you feel that the children think is the least important thing for them. So they're not really that bothered about that one principle. Which principle do you think kind of they rank the lowest in terms of being the most important thing for them? So technically it's the least important for them. So just pop one letter into the chat for me that represents that statement you think they're not so bothered about.
C. So they reckon C. I reckon C is the common. A.
Okay. All right, I'm just going to close the chat.
GA. So C would be the NSMAs there. So.
Okay, right. So we've tested these principles, and what we do across Wales, we've worked with so many different young ambassador groups. We've also worked with younger children on leadership programs, and we've also gone into schools. And one thing that has completely blown my mind, and Simon's mind as well, when he's done the same workshop, but we've been separate facilities. So what we do is we ask the children to get themselves into small groups, and I give them these 9 statements, and I'll ask them to rank order them in order of most important to least important. Now, generally, the top 3, well, the top 1 that will always come, they will always put first, and it blows my mind a little bit, is A. So to feel safe when taking part. They feel that is the most important feature for them in any physical activity or sport. And when I've asked them, what does that mean for them? They'll generally come back and say to feel physically safe, that they're not going to be harmed, and to feel that their coaches are suitably qualified and they're obviously protectors of them in that space. So they're not going to be harmed by that adult in that space. So that's really interesting. Safety for them is always top. And even the groups that I work with across North Wales and West Wales, they always go for safe. And it completely blows my mind a little bit, but it's how they feel right now. The other one is C. They feel like they need a champion, an adult, to make sure that they feel happy. And then generally the last one will be, I'm just going to move my screen a minute because it's on the last bit, is I. So support to help build my confidence. E will feature in there as well, but they don't feel that the family bit's important. They feel like activities with their friends is more important than their family. So they're the most important ones. The one that is the least important is actually, I'm trying to see where it is now, is not all of G, but it's around having a range of activities and a range of equipment. So they don't feel that's important for them to have a range of equipment and a range of activities necessarily within one session. They feel that they can be quite creative within like the one activity and they don't need fancy equipment. So they have said to us that actually, even if they've got nothing and they've just got one piece of equipment, they can create obstacles with like jumpers or different things. They don't need all the fancy gear. So that's really interesting. Now, obviously, being on a bike is going to be different because they will want a decent bike and a helmet. But looking at the grand scheme of all sport, they don't feel that actually they need to have a range of different things and all the kind of latest gear. They can be creative with what they got. What are people's thoughts on that? Feel free to come off mute and jump in.
Yeah, if anyone wants to jump in. I can't see who wants to jump in. You can put your hand up if you want, or just put it in the chat or unmute.
I suppose for me, it's just a surprise, and well, not a surprise, but sometimes you think things like all the DBS checks and things are all a bit of a formality and a bit procedural. So it's surprising for me that it's so important to children as well, the safety.
Yeah, and it really is, and it's something that I'm going to do a little bit more research into over the next 12 months because I really want to understand what that safe feels like for young people, because it always comes up as top on every single one. And I honestly thought they were going to be like fun. Having fun is going to be top priority.
Yeah.
Or like having my efforts rewarded and different things. But every time it's safe, and I'm a bit like, is that because of they hear more in like through social media now, and they kind of, they're kind of aware of the world a bit more than maybe we were as youngsters because we weren't so connected. I don't know, but we're going to explore that a little bit more. But yeah, definitely, Tanya, it is an interesting one, and obviously the DBSs are very important for us to protect the children, but they do like to feel physically safe from harm and know that coach or that volunteer is not going to harm them in any way when I've asked them that question. So, okay.
Oh, we got a hand up. Gareth's got his hand up. Yeah, Gareth.
Go on, Gareth.
No, I'd argue that children are less connected these days than they ever were, because actually the social connection between them are not genuine social connections in many respects.
Yeah, this is true.
So they don't actually know what it's like to actually have, what previous generations have. They live a very different life. And you said it's a surprise to you, but I think I'm not surprised that actually the feeling of safety is one of the most important things to children and young people, because a lot of children live very vulnerable lives these days. And I think we have to be really careful that we don't view the world through the lens of our own childhoods.
Yeah, true. So that's a very good point. Do you see that coming through your club, Gareth, at all, with kind of like what you said just there?
I think it's the lived experience of children these days. I mean, when you see 5-6-year-olds with smartphones in their hands and not engaging with people and not talking with people, you see all the research about the impact on children's language development. They don't know how to navigate the world because many of them don't actually live in the real world. They live in a socially constructed world that's created by actors who don't have children's best interests at heart.
Good point. Thank you, Gareth. That's really interesting. We'll come back to that later. Okay, so here is a little image of basically everything that the framework kind of advocate for. And again, tested with young people to make sure this is based on what they want, and it kind of brings together kind of all the points that I've highlighted just now. I'm hoping this is going to work for me now. Right. Bear with me a second.
Yeah.
Oh, now it's going to jump 4 pages. Right, behave now.
Okay, yeah, we're playing the video, yeah?
Right, not yet. It's jumped.
Yeah, you've jumped about 10 slides now.
I know. All right, let's try again. There we go. Are you all with me now? There we are.
No, yeah, okay. Safety and belonging, yeah?
Yeah, we're there.
Okay,
Sorry.
yeah.
Technical glitch. I'm still here. Okay, so the Foundations Framework Wales, as I said, is a document at the moment. And within the document, section 4 of the document looks at the 3 principal areas. So we've got the safety and belonging, and then I'll move on in a minute to the other areas as well. And within each principal area, you will see a table which is divided into the grey column, which outlines what children have told us they want from their sporting experience. The navy column explains what that environment should look and feel like to meet the need of what children have said that their needs are. The green column is around facilitator practice and behaviours. And then the pinky red column is around the role of leadership. Now, that leadership could be the governing body, it could be the committee, it could be the local authority, for example. And then we've got the same then for enjoyment and involvement and development and confidence. So you will see it works across from left to right. And then if the kind of pink red column is achieved, it will then mean that obviously the green and the navy columns are kind of in place to enable children to have their needs met. So that's kind of how that works. Now, we had a document. The document was actually finalised just over a year ago. And then with the sector, we've been working with partners to disseminate internally. So all staff within organisations at Sport Wales Fund are aware of the framework. And we've been meeting nationally every 6 months in person and then online in between to kind of agree the tweaking of the framework and the resource development as well. So I'm just going to go into some of the resources now. And I'm going to show you some of these in action. Hopefully some of you might recognise some of the backgrounds in some of the videos as well. And just thank you to kind of those who have kind of been a part of some of the capturing of imagery, I will say. And then I'll go through some of the other bits as well as we move forward. So I'm just going to show you the promotional video which went out in November. And this obviously captures a range of different sports, bearing in mind all the partners we've worked with, but hopefully you might recognise some people on the video.
3, 2, 1, let's go! Go, go, go! All the way there!
The Welsh sports sector has come together to create Foundations Framework Wales.
Find the cone then, tuck your bibs in.
It's a good practice guide aimed at anyone who delivers sport for children.
I want you all to agree or disagree with the following statements.
I don't think sport should be fun.
Sport should be fun, because if it isn't fun, there's no point in going.
Are we ready to have fun?
It's like very, very joyful.
Lovely.
I want a coach who wants to make me confident.
Back down to bring those arms over the water.
When you learn from mistakes, it means you're improving.
Are we ready for some games?
Winning isn't the most important thing in sport. Trying your hardest is.
It's not over. I think the coach is going to do one last one.
While it's not always about winning, it's definitely always about having fun. Search Foundations Framework Wales to find out more.
Okay. So hopefully some of you might have recognised some of the imagery in the video there, but that video went live in November and was shown across several different platforms. I think in total we had 41 different partners promote the framework, which was fantastic. So some of you might have seen it on social media already, which is great. And now we're at the point of creating some resources then to support with the embedding of the framework. So I'm just going to kind of whiz through some of these, and then what I'll do is I'll stop sharing and allow you to ask lots of questions. Hopefully we can have a good conversation about it. So one of the first things that we developed to support the framework was coaching videos. And we've got 3 different sets of videos that outline how to create a multi-sport approach, how to be a friendly and approachable coach and volunteer, and how to engage in non-early specialisation as well. So using kind of an open method, a parallel method of coaching within that. So if you want to see any of those videos, they're actually on the Foundation. If you Google Foundations Framework Wales, it'll take you through to the Sport Wales page, and they're actually housed on the coaching films. And you can have a little look through them. I'll just
what I'll do, Claire, at the end, anything we kind of talk about with regards to that, we'll put together some links and things, and I'll email out all of the kind of sign-ups then with our resource, maybe tomorrow or the day after.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm just going to quickly show this video. So this is an example of one of them.
Regan, you okay? You want a drink?
In this video, we'll show you the benefits of offering a range of physical activities and sports that don't demand early specialisation or selection at an early age. The video will also show how this can develop children's skills by offering a multi-sport approach.
So when we work with young children, we really need to avoid something called early specialisation, and this is the focusing of one sport to the exclusion of others. And this, we know from the research, can cause harm to young people in terms of long-term injuries, overuse, stress, and psychological issues in terms of burnout.
No holding, but you can push them away. Nice, well done. So the warm-up will be without the footballs, just so we can introduce that body positioning without having the football-specific thing to think about, and then we'll move on to a skill-based game to introduce that, see if they can use it with the ball, and then we're going to put it into a game situation.
From a coaching perspective, you can use a range of activities to keep the participants interested. This can help you become more creative in the delivery of your sessions. Remember, your role can help build a variety of fundamental movement skills, so children can access a range of sports and physical activities inside and outside of your sessions.
And we know also that children need a very broad foundation of skills. So the more that we give them a range of physical activities and sports, a multi-sport approach to physical activity, the more that we are helping them with their long-term physical activity engagement. And as part of that also, children that have a really broad foundation of skills actually are more likely to be successful in a sport in the long term.
Okay, so they're the other resources that we've also developed. We've got a competition poster, which I know working with Fion's been really helpful in kind of shaping this poster. But this is something that can be put up at competitions just to kind of remind volunteers, coaches and parents, you know, the environment that children want from that experience. I think sometimes we think children, you know, want to win at all costs, and children do love the competition, as you can see there, competition tailored to the right level. But obviously what children don't like, I suppose, is the pressure that is put on them to kind of, you know, win at all costs. And then if they don't win, that I suppose, that pressure that's put on them from externals then, and they feel like they're a failure or they've made mistakes, and they kind of can't articulate that and work through it. So they said to us, obviously, safety is important. In that competition needs to still be fun and enjoyable, welcoming, etc. But talking with the child or the participant or the cyclist is obviously really important as well. Lots of praise, etc. to go with that. So just a little reminder that can be used there. We've got some e-modules that Simon, I'm not sure if Simon's on the call yet. I can't actually see who's on the call, so I'm not sure if he's here.
He is here now. He has joined a bit ago now. So.
Oh, there he is. So Simon's on the call. So I'm actually, Simon, do you want to go through the e-modules just to break up my Newport tone?
No problem at all. They may like the Newport tone.
They may. They may.
It's the velodromes in Newport, everyone. Hi, yes. So yeah, we've got 4 e-modules. So they're all part of sort of one big module in a sense. So it's called Creating Positive Physical Activity and Sport and Experiences for Children. And within that, there's 4 e-modules. So the first one is an awareness module, giving you an awareness of what the Foundations framework is. And that one's going to be directed to, it's kind of everyone involved in sport. So there's some information at the start. We always check a knowledge quiz in there because it's good to test your knowledge. Then there's scenarios at the end. So there'll be a scenario hopefully suited to your role within sport. If you're all coaches, there's a coaching scenario about how you can use the Foundations framework within the sort of how you coach your sessions. Within that scenario, it gives you obviously a task to do. Then there's questions, more like reflective questions, looking at what your own coaching practice. And then on e-modules, it's very hard to give specific feedback. So what we've done is the next page after that, you will get feedback, a generic feedback of things that could support you in sort of those reflective questions. There's also different scenarios. So there's also ones for committee members, because it's quite common that people have they have two or three roles in a club. So if you're a committee coach, if you're a committee member, you could be a coach or vice versa. So there's a committee scenario. There's also a sports development officer scenario, and there's also a young ambassador one. So if you have any young coaches within your club, feel free to direct them towards that young ambassador scenario as well, because that could support their learning. After that, then, we have got 3 modules that are all aimed at coaches. So the first one's for everybody. The next 3 are aimed at coaches. So the first one is about creating safety and belonging within your coaching. Again, they're very similar. They're about 25 minutes long. They're all free to access. Within that, again, you'll have some information at the start. And some of those coaching videos have been placed into those e-modules as well, just to break it up a bit, because it's nice. Coaches like seeing other coaches coach. We don't like, I don't know about you, but we don't like reading about coaching. So you can see those videos of other people coaching and get ideas. There's also a drop and drag exercise where you look at the behaviors involved in good coaching and what we think it could be really beneficial to support that foundation phase. And then we go on to, again, we've got some more scenarios. But within this scenario, we're going to branch them. So there's different ones. So there's one for sort of new to coaching. There's one for moderately experienced coaches, and there's one for very experienced coaches. So hopefully you pick the tier which suits you best, and then you can answer that scenario and get feedback on it. Again, those modules formats are very similar for the remaining 3. So we've got one on safety and belonging, one on developmental and confidence, development and confidence, and the final one is on enjoyment and involvement as well. So those 3 modules. Once you do each module, you get a badge to say you completed it. Once you completed all 4, you get a certificate. So we're trying to encourage you. Everyone likes a badge and a certificate, so we thought that could be another way of getting people to take part in those what's called those modules. You can do them at your own pace. You can start and stop whenever you want to. You don't have to do all 4 if you don't want to do all 4. We obviously recommend you do, but if you think, actually, I've got quite a sound knowledge in safety and belonging, I'll probably focus on the other 2. That's fine with us. You can actually go through that and look at the content and think, okay, what's going to suit my coaching practice best? And you can look at that reflective practice, thinking, what are my sort of strengths? What are my weaknesses? What do I need to work on? Opportunities, things like that. You can use these modules for that as well. So you've got those 4 modules, and I said there will be, hopefully we'll add more modules to the Foundations framework sort of, section on Brightspace. And then we can build that. So hopefully feedback we'll get from the learner will help us plan future learning opportunities. And that's where there is a survey at the start and end of each module, collecting information about yourself and how you found that module, what you found useful. But again, that's just so we can try and tailor we can even change the modules to suit your learning needs in the future as well. So that's why we're doing it. But that's a brief overview. I've chucked a lot of information at you. But as I said, feel free to ask any questions, and we can hopefully answer them. If not, we'll come back to you.
And I put the links in the chat, in the column there. We'll share this PowerPoint with you after, and Mark will share all the links. And if you want to set yourself up on Brightspace to have a user account to access any of the e-modules, that's great. The last bit I'm going to share with you now, there is a little bit of a plea. So the plea is we would like some clubs to potentially test the Foundations 360 club reflection tool for us. So we're in the user testing phase at the moment where we've designed this club reflection tool, and I'll go through what that is in a minute. But but we're asking for some clubs to just give us maybe 10 minutes of their time just to go into the portal, have a little look at the formatting, have a look at the question, and just give us some feedback. So when I'm going through, if you're like, actually, yeah, I would quite like to do that, let us know at the end of the chat, and I can get you signed up with Simon, and then myself and Fionn can send some information out. So the Foundations 360 is really where we start to bring the Foundations framework to life. We've obviously got the document, but interacting with the content is what we really need to do to start to get clubs and coaches to really reflect on highlighting the amazing work that goes on, but also maybe thinking about some of the areas that they could strengthen. And that's the purpose of the Foundations 360. So the reason it's called 360 is there's 3 levels to this club reflection tool. It's got a committee level, and it's got a coaches level, and it's got a participant level. So it really gets a good feel of the culture of your club from all different angles. And I'll go through in a minute kind of how you can pick up those results. So the Foundations 360 is free. We work with several clubs to kind of format where we are at the moment in terms of the questions, etc. But we do need more feedback on top. It's divided into the 3 principal areas that I've been speaking about already. And it's an online digital platform for club self-reflection. There's no uploading of evidence. You don't need to upload any evidence. It's basically questions, and you click whether you agree, disagree, etc. to the statement or the question, and it'll give you like a score at the end. So as you can see here, you would set yourself up for access to Foundations 360 on Brightspace, and then your committee would enrol, or one committee member would enrol to have access to the reflection tool. Your committee then as a collective, or we would encourage, as many committee members as possible to be involved in contributing to phase 1. You would complete 3 surveys. Now these surveys, they're really long. I think it's like 7 or 8 questions, and it's a multiple choice click on that. So it is really quick. You can get it done in 10 minutes. And when you come out of that survey, then you will have a radar graph which shows you your strengths as a committee in isolation. Phase 2 then is you would repeat the process with coaches in your club and participants in your club to also complete surveys which are relevant for the coaches and the participants. Again, they're short and they're snappy. The children's ones are really, really simple, and we're trying to make them as simple as possible so they can understand the language. And then what you'd have at the end of phase 2 is a radar graph for the committee, a radar graph for what your club, your coaches and your participants think of the club, and then you can put them together to look at the overall club. You can also look at them separately to see if there is differences. I'm on a committee with for 3 different sports. I'm on there as a welfare officer, as a secretary, as a general volunteer. I don't know why I keep signing myself up to these sports clubs. My husband, I think, is going to leave me at some point. But I'm aware of the demand, but we've tried to make it as real simple as possible. So it's kind of purposeful for clubs to kind of go, yeah, we're doing good, or we need to improve in that area. So as you can see here, here's one of the club committee kind of layouts. So there's 6 questions in the enjoyment and involvement one, and there's a simple question, and you would just click on which one of these apply. No need for uploading of evidence. But it's got to be obviously the truth in terms of how you feel in comparison to that statement. And obviously then if it's not in place, it's something for you to work towards. It's not something that anyone's going to hold you to account and kind of follow you up on, but it just helps with that self-reflection. So after you complete the committee one, obviously you've got the coaches one as well there, and you have a participant one. It would then give you a radar graph. And it would show you your strength. So the more colour you've got in that area, the stronger you are. The less colour, so the less the closer it is to the middle, shows that you've got an area to develop. So as you can see there, safety and belonging for this club is as best as it can be. So they are sustaining for their foundations. They are just sustaining the best that they can be. With enjoyment and involvement, they're kind of in the middle. So they're embedding foundations. They're kind of getting there, but they're not quite at the final stages yet, but they're on their way to getting there. And then with development and confidence, they've got a lot of work to do in that space. But that's okay, because it's something for them to work towards. So our ask to the club is, if any of you would like to test the club reflection tool for us. It'll take 10 minutes of your time, I promise. And just give us a little bit of feedback on, is it too much? Is it not enough? Are the visuals good, etc.? We'd be really, really grateful. And I suppose the ask then from us to you today is just reflect on the amazing work taking place to date in accordance with the Foundations Framework Wales and those principal areas. Have a little look at any areas for future development, especially for the junior section, and just consider things like the voice of the participant in your planning to make sure it's child-led. Utilise the Foundations 360 on an annual basis to highlight your kind of key areas of strength, but also some areas for development. Share the e-modules and coaching videos with your fellow coaches and volunteers if you feel that they would be any good. And also download the competition posters, which Fionn will share with you. And if you want to use them at any competitions, you are free to do so. I'm going to stop talking now and open up for questions and time for discussion.
Great. Thank you, Claire and Simon, for that. Yeah, definitely a lot of information has been shared. Maybe if people weren't overly aware of what the Foundations framework is, it might be a lot to digest. So like you did mention, obviously, if they wanted to contact you afterwards, that's more than fine. And like myself and Fionn are available as well to kind of direct people to. But, you know, as per the usual format, we're going to open up the floor now for you guys to ask any questions you might have. You know, I guess the first one is, well, what's in it for us as a club? Why would my club do this? I think that's a good question, and how is it going to benefit our members? Maybe if nobody else wants to ask the question, so if you want to put your hand up, I think that'll be a really good one to answer first. But anyone want to go first? Hand up or question in the chat?
They're warming up.
Okay. Oh, Nick, I could see. Oh, I seen you lift your hand up, Nick. So if you wanna, do you want to just say you're and what club you're from or where you're from, Nick? And
I'm a cycling coach with Mainly Flyers in Cardiff.
Great. Okay. And then what's your question there, Nick?
Where's the engagement with the parents?
Really good question, Nick. Really good question. And we've had this discussion over and over again. So the plan is at the moment that we would like to share the framework with clubs and coaches to make sure that they've had chance to get to grips with the framework, make some small tweaks if they need to. Bear in mind, I'm working with several sports, and obviously that spans like to thousands of clubs across Wales, but give those clubs and those coaches a chance to kind of embed those changes, make sure that that environment is needs-led, etc. The plan is then we will then go to parents, because parents play a vital role in creating those experiences as well. But what we didn't want to do, and this was a discussion actually with the sector, because we were going to go throw everything out at the same time, but we kind of were like, that's kind of give clubs and coaches time to kind of embed it first before we empower the parents to have an understanding of this framework, and then they start challenging clubs on it, and then clubs be like, I don't know anything about this framework, just give us time to kind of do that. So we are giving coaches and clubs the time to embed first, and then in 12 months we will be going out and creating resources for parents and also challenging some of the pressures that they might be putting on young people, but also making sure that they're aware of what their child wants from that experience. There may be cases, Nick, not in cycling. I've never seen it in cycling, so I'm hoping ever in cycling. But in some sports, the atmosphere created by the coach is not great, and we need to challenge that in some areas as well. So that's kind of why we're staging it with giving people time to embed first before we kind of challenge, but also empower parents at the same time.
Also, what I meant by the engagement with the parents, you're saying 1 in 3 in some areas, 22% are sort of falling out of sport by the age of 7. The parents we have are the parents in all sports. If they're a member of a club, they are actually encouraging their child to do the sports. How does this framework then get shared with the parents of the 78% of children who aren't engaged in sport after the age of 7? because you're preaching to the choir. We've got parents in, all sports. If your child isn't on an academy by the age of 6, if your child isn't in the pool, but at 5 o'clock in the morning, if we have all the parents, the parents we have in our clubs are all actively encouraging their children to be the best they can, and they've taken that lifestyle choice to get their children encouraged in sport. How do you get the other 78% involved? How do we grow the numbers in all sports, especially cycling? Because that's our sport. But how do you grow the numbers? We have in Matey Flyers, we are opposite a very ethnically diverse school, and yet we are very unethnically diverse in our club. And there's a big crossover there. Lynette Morgan sort of said the number of girls falling out of sport with the Tour de France thing. So how do we get those parents involved to grow all sports?
I suppose there's lots of different approaches. There's like we're working with Early Years Wales and Play Wales to make sure that advocacy comes through, like your health visitors and your kind of early year settings as well. And I know from working with like the local authorities, they go out and working out underserved communities, and they're trying to do that as well. But I suppose I might have a question for you. What would work for you in your club in terms of working with those parents? Is it a case of they're not aware of the provision, or it's not for them? Like what kind of feedback and insight have you got?
They can hardly not be aware of a cycle track directly opposite their school. It's 460 meters long and attached to they are very aware it is there. Is it a cultural thing? Is it that people from a certain ethnicity don't view our sport as their sport of choice? But then you might say, well, what is their sport of choice? Without it sounding incorrect, the Indian, Pakistani, and Bangladeshi boys are all in the fields playing cricket in the summer. They're not riding bikes. They're doing a sport within their own community. And if you look there, it is very much their own community. But what are those other people doing? We are open arms. We actively encourage any ability, any ethnicity, but we don't have any bar on it. But they choose not to. They choose not to choose our club to come cycling, and the cycling as a sport very much UK wide is very white. But it's not that. That's not the issue. It's all like, how do you get those 78% of the kids and parents? Why are the parents not putting their children in sport?
And I think there's so many different reasons that you just touched upon. And sometimes it's cultural. Sometimes it will be because an online device is much easier to pacify them than spend the effort to take them to the club. A lot of the time it could be cost. Cost is obviously a huge barrier for lots of our young people in Wales. There's so many different factors, but Fiona's actually got me thinking. Sorry, Fiona, I'm going to come to you, but we've obviously done a little bit of work with the Central South Consortium, haven't we, in terms of, because cycling is actually high on the latent demand for children across the Central South region. So Cardiff, Bridgend, Merthyr, RCT, etc. Cycling's in the top 6 sports that children want to do more of, but it's how do we connect that appetite to do more with the provision in their communities? And is it because they need an introduction or a taster to kind of feel comfortable and welcome to turn up somewhere? It can be quite daunting if they haven't got all the gear. Do they feel like they need to have a bike to come along? I suppose there's lots of different factors there, isn't there? Fiona, what's your insight in terms of some of the work that we've done with Central South?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, yeah, difficult question. And I'm trying to think, I guess at the moment we're trying to like diversify like the offers that we have. Like obviously our aim is to get more people in clubs, but at the moment we have been working on like different sorts of programs, I guess almost like interventions to target these like underrepresented groups. And this pedal and picnic that we've created, which is like targeted at teenage girls. I mean, I know there's a different age group, but I guess it is kind of like designing the activity that those children want. If we're talking now about these children that don't currently engage with sport, then does the activity need to be a bit different, I guess? Yeah, there's also cycling's a difficult one. There's always like extra barriers, isn't there, with that? But we've got the Beicio Cymru Foundation now, where we can apply for funds to support some of these like programs that we're working on, doing some work with street games as well to kind of like target these areas of deprivation. I'm not sure. It's hard to say. Like we're definitely just thinking about it, and it's on our mind about how we can reach these people. But I think it's just like an ongoing difficult situation.
So what sort of Mark? I'm going to come in now. So yeah, definitely some of the guys on the call, and I know they've got Gareth is on the call, and he's had involvement with Whitchurch and Cardiff BMX, who spoke earlier. Obviously, we got our other BMX clubs represented here, Llinvi and Dragon Riders, obviously mainly flyers. You've all got like the pools of bikes at the tracks and or at your venues and things. So obviously equipment is accessible in that sense. And what's worked well, maybe Matthew can kind of back me up here. I do volunteer and help at Llinvi BMX Club, and we've run obviously the Beicio Cymru's kind of one of our programs are cycle festivas, and kind of free, like open up your facility for free in your club, and all the equipment's available, access to the track, etc., and the helmets and the bikes. And certainly for Llinvi, Matthew, that's worked really well to kind of encourage new members from the local area in Nantafallon. Matthew, if he's still on you, or has he dropped off? I'm over to you, Matthew. Am I right, or am I making that up?
No, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. That's definitely helped us with getting youngsters along to take part in the sessions, and those that free opportunity just gives people a chance to come along with nothing attached and sort of just have a go. We did some sessions for female only with Fionn as well. They worked really well. So sometimes it's like going for some open but targeted stuff as well, which helps youngsters get in. Obviously, like the area one of the areas that are close to us, which we're based in Skyride, and that's like one of the highest sort of most deprived areas in all of Wales. So it's up there in the top 10 on the Welsh Index, multiple deprivation. So I think financial can be a bit of a barrier, but a big part of it is parents' actual interest in taking children along to sessions, taking an interest in the young people, in their own children, and sort of getting involved in the club as well themselves. And I think different clubs have different experiences of it, but like we often have lots of kids that come along to our sessions, and sometimes they come without their parents because they're local and they know where the track is, and it's accessible and easy to get to and stuff, and they take part in those. But then in terms of them continuing those sessions and going on to maybe race BMX and take part in other things, there just isn't then the sort of like buy-in from parents to support their own kids to pursue it. And so I think that's the big part. And I know somebody touched upon it earlier in terms of might be Gareth or Nick was saying, they're more interested in looking at devices, and then their kids go on devices rather than getting out and having, real experiences, real social activity, physical activity, and all the benefits that taking part in any sport helps. But yeah, in particular cycling, and obviously from our perspective with BMXing, we think it's one of the most accessible because of how sort of the cheaper the bikes, and the fact that we've got helmets and bikes available at our club. So yeah, it's pros and cons to all sorts, isn't there?
Yeah. So yeah, thanks, Matt. So there, obviously I've been to Maindy Track. I did a coaching course there, and the locals were definitely sat next to the track, socializing. They are no interested in the cycling aspect, and they were up to no good, unfortunately, on that occasion. So how do we engage them young people? I guess there's opportunities with Cardiff Council. I'm sure their youth provision might want to support. I guess did they do anything with Maindy Flyers from the Cardiff Youth Service? Definitely opportunities there have worked well in Swansea. The Young Carers community did some stuff with Gower Riders with the Geraint Thomas Foundation. Whitchurch did some stuff as well, Gareth, with the trying to engage the local community as well, didn't they, with the Geraint Thomas Foundation funding I don't know if Gareth wants to talk, but he's I think he's got some childcare, so he's putting some things in the chat. But yeah, Simon, you've raised your hand.
Yeah, just to get in response to Nick's original question, I've got a couple of
it's
things.
fair, yeah.
Yeah, I think the parent one, getting like those attracting those parents whose children aren't particularly say sporty in that 22%. I think from my point of view, there's no quick fix to that. I think it's a slow burner, and I'm big at the foundations framework, but I think if we get some more multi-sport approach, because what you may, I don't know if you notice it at all or not, but I think the percentage of children with those sort of foundational skills and the foundational skills or fundamental skills to take part in sport now is probably getting lower. I think we had a survey or a study by a university in West Wales who said they went into a class in Llanelli and sort of something like 80% of the children didn't have the fundamental skills they're meant to have by the age of 7. And I think that impacts them on taking part in sport. And then if we try and go through that multi-sport approach when they're younger, so they've got their after-school clubs, they've got some clubs nearby that are multi-sport, they get that range. For me, that could have an impact later on. It's not a quick fix, it's probably a very long fix. But because they've got that more fundamental, there's a bigger range of fundamental skills, they may take up more sports because they have those skills to do it. I know with me, my balance is absolutely appalling. And sadly, I think I've passed it on to my son. So as for cycling, we need to focus on that. If he did more stuff on balance, he could get on a bike then, he'd be much better. But that for me, one thing, it could be a slow burner. And going back to the attracting populations that aren't traditionally involved in cycling, my background's inclusion with disability sport, but I always think if there's no role models within a sport, like for example, you haven't got like all the sort of what's called Olympians are sort of all look the same from the same background. So what can we actively do then as a club to go out and attract those members who aren't traditionally from us? Because I know lots of sport clubs, they're really, really inclusive, but I know they're inclusive. They know they're inclusive, but the people who aren't from that population don't know they're inclusive. So how can you go out to those populations and say, look, guys, this is our club. This is what we do. This is a taster. Again, we talk about that belonging sense of going out and making people feel that they can come. And you may already do this, by the way, so I'm sorry if I'm teaching you to suck eggs. But so, yeah, what extra can we do? Because you could be the most inclusive club in the world and people may not know about you. And it's like, how can we actively go out to those communities, engage with those communities, find that one person who's like the ringleader in that community to actively get people to come? And that's some of the things we've worked on with groups before in the past, but you may be doing that. So I'm very sorry if I'm teaching you to suck eggs.
Yeah, cool. So Gareth's got his hand up. You put some stuff in the chat as well, but yeah, go over to you, Gareth, if you want to speak.
Just really, I suppose, a question back to Claire and Simon. Like, clubs are great, and we are all part of clubs that we give a huge amount of time, every single person on this call, every week, wind, rain, snow, whatever, yeah? But almost what I'm hearing here is that, if children haven't got the foundational basic skills to take part in sport, yeah, you're asking clubs to pick up the mantle that society and schools have failed to give kids. And, clubs are at the end, one part of a wider pyramid of sporting participation. And now almost what clubs have always been, haven't always been that bit where they're the bottom of the pyramid. They've always built on what society and schools have done. And I think what the reflection for me hearing this is that, perhaps schools, and this isn't a sweeping statement about schools, but my people on the call know my 3 sons. They're sporty kids, right? They get one 40-minute PE lesson a week. And most weeks in the run-up to Christmas, that is cancelled. Most weeks it gets cancelled because there's another priority in school. It is an absolute scandal that schools are allowed to get away with that. And it's just appalling, in my view, because it doesn't, because they're a kid, we're all passionate about sport, so we will encourage our kids to be involved in sport. But for lots of parents who work 3 or 4 jobs to keep the lights on in the house and put food on the table, sport is not a priority. And we don't invest in the physical well-being of our children in Wales. And I think it's really, we will do everything we can do as clubs, but we can't mend what's not happening in schools because we don't have the capacity. And we're also not paid to do that. None of the people on this call are paid to do the work that we do. Schools are paid, and I think we should be, I'm not knocking what you've done. I completely understand what you've done and why you've done it, but I think it's reflective of the disinvestment we have in children and young people in this country.
So before you speak, so what I'll say with regards to this, and I agree with what you're saying. So, however, the three most important for some children, certainly the ones who come to our clubs, and I get the point earlier when Nick said, engaging the parents, we're preaching to the converted, but we do have a role in a sense that the three most important people to some of the children are their parents or their family life or whoever they live with, their teachers when they go to school, and then the third most important people they interact with is their coaches in their sports clubs. So I guess us as coaches is what Claire and Simon are trying to get us to kind of do is, we need to be. It needs to be a really safe place. It needs to be good. We need to be nurturing these young people as best to our ability within our volunteer roles. I don't know if that kind of sums it up, but I agree with you with the others. Some schools are better than the others as well, Gareth. So some schools are sports. I agree. Maybe not all, but anyway, okay. Agree, Mark. Thanks, Gareth. Right. So Claire, did you want to? So Richard has got his hand up. Claire and Simon, did you want to kind of respond to any of the stuff?
I'll let Rich come in first and then I'll respond because Rich might have something linked
go on,
to
Richard.
that.
Yeah, Richard.
I wasn't so much a question, it was just an observation, really. At Maindy, we don't seem to have the problem which has been raised a lot here. We get lots of kids from 6 to 10 years old. In fact, we're actually full right now. We've got to stop the last trial. We'll be full. We have more of an issue with keeping the kids once they get 11, 12, 13, especially girls. And that's where I think some more of the emphasis needs to be done, because I think it's like a double whammy almost. It's not just about keeping them. If you can keep those kids for longer, they inspire the younger kids to keep those longer as well. If you've got a 10-year-old girl and she can see 12-year-old, 13, 14-year-old girls in your club, they are more likely to continue cycling. And we go through phases, I suppose, where we get a good collection of girls there and younger ones come through. Then it drops off again, So I think that's what a bigger point is for us, rather than attracting the very young people. We get those quite easily.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because I feel like every club's probably got their pinch points of they're either not getting the young people in or they're getting them in and they're not able to retain at a certain age, where we do see the drop off. And that's common across most sports as well. But there's probably a bit of learning actually between the clubs to say, well, I'm struggling with this kind of barrier, like how have you overcome it? Because I think already on the call we're sharing some really lovely things that some people are like, well, I've tried this and this has worked. And I think because maybe take I suppose pinch other people's ideas, they might not always work in our context, in our community, but sometimes they do. So I think that's a really, really lovely point, and thank you for raising that, Richard. And just to go back to your point there, Gareth, absolutely agree. I think so. I obviously sit in my role at the moment, but we have got an education team and we're completely nudging them. And the one thing that the whole sports sector is saying is you've got to engage with education. Now, it's a really tricky one, Gareth, and I can tell you know a lot about education because you know about community focused schools. So I know you've obviously got a good understanding there. And I do actually link in with the community focused schools department in Welsh Government, and they're aware of the framework, and we're trying to link in with the food and fun provision that takes place on school sites in the summer holidays to kind of connect it all in there as well. So it is going to be a slow burner, as Simon said earlier. Well, I used to be a primary school teacher. I was a secondary school teacher for 5 years actually, and I was so frustrated with the children coming in being completely turned off by PE in year 7 before they've even had their first lesson, that I actually retrained as a primary school teacher and then went into primary school teaching as a PE specialist. And I worked in one of the most deprived areas in Newport, and we actually had Beicio Cymru come in, it was Welsh cycling at the time, and deliver a 6-week programme. And my year 5 pupils were crying. They were absolutely sobbing. And I'm like, why are you so upset? They couldn't ride a bike. They'd never been taught to ride a bike by their parents. So their parents had never bought them a bike because they couldn't ride a bike. And it just wasn't a priority for the parents. But as soon as the children were taught how to ride a bike within the 6-week programme, I think 3 or 4 parents at Christmas bought their children bikes. And then the kind of cycle began. But I'm also aware that I got 2 boys and they both loved downhill mountain biking. They took it up in COVID. So they go out and they build tracks and they ride down tracks and they break bones on tracks and everything else that goes with it. But they're not in a club because actually they're not aware of any downhill mountain biking clubs. It probably is, but I work in sport. I'm not aware of any locally for their age. So again, they're probably in the system, but they're not in a club. So how many young people are actually out riding bikes, BMX bikes, downhill mountain bikes, but are not in a club? So we're not actually kind of like linking them all up. It's just a question that popped into my head. I'm not sure if there's an answer for that, but just sort of put it out there.
Well,
Go on, Mark.
so yeah, definitely where I live, there's millions of kids out building jumps, filming themselves. They're not in a cycling club because there isn't one, unfortunately, in Ystalyfera. So yeah, there's your answer, I guess. But then the argument is the ones who live next to Maindee track, why aren't they? There's the opportunities there for them to kind of engage with that club or up in my stag. You know, definitely see children riding their mountain bikes when I driving over to the track. I've never seen them at the track. There's always children riding their bikes on the street and things. But yeah.
What about to Rich's point? Rich, what club were you from? Sorry. He disappeared.
Maindee.
Is that in Cardiff as well?
Yeah.
The Maindee Flyers, yeah.
And then with the other club, Whitchurch, is that in Cardiff? A different club?
No, it's in Cardiff as well, but different club.
Yeah. And then Gareth is Cardiff BMX and / Whitchurch is now, right, Gareth?
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah.
Okay. So, Rich, do you get a diversity in your club, or is it just you get an influx of the younger ages?
No, just younger age group. As Nick was saying earlier, it's the same club as Nick is in.
Okay.
And on the face of it, we've got a bike, we've got a shed full of bikes, all free. We've got helmets, whatever. So there's no barrier really for somebody turning up, especially a younger rider. Even when we do the trials, we do a month trial for riders to try in. It's all free. So there's not even like a cost thing there. We probably don't advertise as much as we could. Because we don't need to. Because our trials are generally full. You just go on our website, put your name down. But every 3 months they're full. So we probably haven't tried targeting a wider range of diversities, But yeah, it's and as Nick said, we're right in the centre of Cardiff. It's a fairly diverse area.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, and I'm not sure if Fion's still on the call or whether is Fion still on the call. Yeah, she's still there. I'm just thinking, Fion. Because obviously Cardiff, I think every primary school in Cardiff has got bikes. I'm pretty sure they have. It was an active travel money, wasn't it, that was put into the schools. So they've all got access to the bikes in the primary schools. But I'm just wondering, Fionn, if there is a case that we could maybe do some work with the Cardiff clubs. Obviously, if you're full and you can't take any more on, that's fine. But the ones who are kind of looking to maybe think about that kind of diversity, creating a sense of belonging for those who maybe feel like they don't belong in a cycling club, whether we could do a little bit of work with Cardiff Met Sport Development to kind of promote some tasters in the schools and then link them in with the clubs. It could be a conversation for the future.
Yeah, for sure. Actually meeting Cardiff Met in like a couple of weeks. But we have done some work. So we've done some school festivas over the last few years with Cardiff schools in deprived areas and then obviously like directing to exit routes. I mean, the main issue we've had is because Whitchurch and Maindee are basically at capacity, is that we haven't really got the exit routes other than Cardiff BMX to direct people to. So that's kind of another issue in itself, really. Is there's such a demand for cycling in Cardiff, we kind of almost need another club. But I've had conversations with Gareth that maybe we might do something more targeted around BMX this year because they've got the room to expand. And I'm also in contact with like Gemma, the road safety team, because I'm aware of that project and there's so many bikes in the schools that like there's just so much potential there. I think it's just kind of like linking all the dots together for sure. And obviously now with the Tour de France finishing in Cardiff, it's only going to get bigger and more demand for it. So yeah, there's definitely a lot that can be done there.
We've got a bit of Tour de France. Yeah, actually, everyone hold on. You might be an influx soon. You might not be able to cope.
Yeah, and there's a new club. We're starting to kind of maybe look to work with different people. So, like for example, there's a big community centre in Cardiff called Grange Town Pavilion, And then they've just set up a cycling club there and applying for some funding actually through Be Active Wales. So that's kind of a very different group of people that we're going to hopefully be engaging with cycling. So we're kind of looking to do things maybe a little bit differently, I guess, in Cardiff. And we're doing some of this pedal and picnic projects that I mentioned earlier as well. Mark ran this like Ride Like G program. So, obviously we have these amazing clubs, but we're looking at like maybe more like community activity and different sorts of things we can do to engage these like different groups into cycling at the moment. But yeah, so lots happening.
Well, sorry, Nick, I think, were you going to come in then? No. Okay, I'll hand back to Mark.
Okay, I'm just gonna quickly plug our next call. Okay, just so we have got another Coaches Corner planned for next month on the 16th of next month, 16th of February. Sorry, 16th of February. We have a Coaches Corner call covering bike maintenance. So that's going to be kind of our guest will be a bicycle mechanic and educator, Chris Dower. So he's going to cover off the basic tools and techniques to keep your bikes at home and at your clubs in top shape, and discuss pathways into training and courses into bike mechanics as well. So if that is of any interest, the links will be out there on the usual channels as well for you to sign up to that. Any other questions?
No other questions from me. Just to say, if anyone is interested in having a look at the Foundation 360, please contact Mark and Fionn, or Mark or Fionn, and then we can get you set up. It should take like 10 minutes, but it'd be just great to get some input from some cycling clubs on whether that's something that you would utilize in the future.
Okay. So I'm not saying anyone needs to nominate themselves now, or we do have a few clubs. Are there anybody who's thinking immediately now, well, actually, we wouldn't mind doing the Foundations 360 kind of pilot and test our own clubs and our learning and kind of engage with you? Is there anyone here? There's no pressure that you need to do that. However, just so Claire can say, oh, well, great, it was well worth coming on the call tonight. We've got someone sign up. But and that's fine. You're welcome to come back to us and nominate yourselves. I'll take that as a maybe, Claire. Okay, we'll take that.
Can I just also add that, just to reiterate everything, Claire and Simon have said, like I've been heavily involved in the development of this for the last year or two, and I think it's really, really great and so well needed, and like the resources are really good. Like I've watched all the coaching videos. I think they're brilliant, and we're really keen at Beicio Cymru to make sure we try and like embed this throughout all of our programs, our stuff we do internally, obviously share it with our clubs. So we're looking to kind of keep on sharing this, encouraging people to use it. So this is just the start, really. So we're really keen for people to get involved.
And certainly what I'd be encouraging as well, and what I've started to do, newly qualified coaches in Wales, I'm kind of reaching out to them. So Richard at Mainly Flyers, who I've kind of spoke to, and we've booked quite a few of your new guys on. So the last course they did, I did email them all out individually. So I think if you as clubs could signpost people to these kind of resources, a lot of them will potentially be parents who are new to coaching and might see it as a bit of a barrier or sometimes quite scary when you're stepping out of your comfort zone. So I certainly see some of these resources as positive things for people to kind of reflect and think, oh well, yeah, that's a good idea. I'd like to try and embed that in my practice. We've got to, does that make sense? Yeah. Okay.
Well, Tanya's put a message on saying that her club, so Wrexham, might be interested. So there you are.
Yeah, great. I'll check with both Richards and Cardiff BMX if they would like to trial. Great. Yeah, that's fine. Obviously, what I'll do, we'll email everyone who's on the call tonight with everything the slides and everything we kind of covered off and links. And then, Claire and Simon, you're happy for me to kind of copy your emails in then. So if people wanted to contact you directly.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Contact Fionn as well. Just about to say to Tanya, it's actually committee members we need to register for the Foundations 360, and they would just look at the committee section at the start and give us feedback on that bit. So it's not so much the coaches, it's committee members. So if anyone's on a committee and they're happy to kind of sign up, and then their committee can have a little look at it and give some feedback, that's the level at the moment, not the coaches level.
So if I've understood it, Claire, we're supposed to do it as a committee, though, collectively, as opposed to individuals hopping on and doing it in their own time. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. But I think at the moment, Tanya, because we're just getting some user testing, you wouldn't necessarily need like the full committee to do it. When you do it for the real thing, then you'd ask as many committee members as possible. But it might just be a case of 2 or 3 of you. Just have a quick look at it. And it's just to give us some feedback on whether it's useful or not.
Okay, no, that sounds more doable actually that way. So thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tanya.
Great. Okay, if there are no other questions, I'm going to stop the recording, and then everyone's free to get on with their evenings, or what's left of it anyway. So, thank you, Claire and Simon, for attending along.
Brilliant. Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
No worries.